Hey, I've got a question for you, Samar, just based on that conversation. It's really interesting because you said very clearly that the smaller parties on the right are basically, oh, you didn't use these words, but they're basically holding National to ransom to form a government. Is some of what your criticism of Labour about actually a weaker, smaller left parties? Like the Greens and the Party Māori could do the same, couldn't they? Couldn't they hold Labour to ransom to get some more of their things through? So some of your maybe anger, maybe the wrong word, should be aimed at them as well, going, come on, you've got more power here than you think, you should push more.
I don't believe that it was because ACT and New Zealand First held National to ransom. I believe that this was a collective agenda, and we saw in the language that National was using in the lead up to the election. They made it very clear that they were running an anti-Māori, anti-co-governance agenda. They're fully united on this. They're funded by the same individuals. So, no, I don't think it's a result of them forcing their hands and, Greens and Te Pāti Māori sucking at negotiations. I genuinely think it's because Labour is not aligned with those more leftist policies, such as transitioning to alternative methods of justice.
Now, it's a fair point, because you're right about the build up to the election, what National was saying, and they were in that same camp. Craig and Shane, do you want to say anything about that conversation just before we wrap up? And sort of, we're going to stay in this area. We're going to move a little bit to police numbers and gang numbers now, which is kind of a part of. But just to finish up with whatever what we've just had, anything else you want to add?
I don't disagree with anything the sister is saying. I think it's just maybe you get a bit conservative when you get older. It is about deliverables, but I have seen some very good things that Labor has introduced. Sometimes I get frustrated with the incremental nature of it, and perhaps we should be a little bit more revolutionary. I was disappointed that we didn't use the mandate that we gave the Prime Minister at the last election. We can say, well, COVID come along, but a simple thing, the collective bargaining, what was it called again, Craig?
Fair pay agreements.
Fair pay agreements. They should have been introduced at the beginning of the terms. They should have been entrenched, and that would have meant that the employers and the government could not have unscrambled the scrambled egg. So there's a prime example where you have the opportunity, you got people on side, you got to move, and you got to do it quickly, and we didn't do it in that respect.
Craig, anything?
Only very briefly for me, which is just that I actually don't think we disagree on the end point here, which is that we want better policy on housing, on income security, on poverty, particularly child poverty. We want better policy on unemployment. All of these things are heading in the wrong direction right now.
Yeah.
Right? And they're heading in the wrong direction, and they're causing the exact problems the police or Māori wardens or whoever has to pick up on the streets of Wellington or Auckland or Christchurch or anywhere else in this country. And as a consequence, those are the things, when we hear this nonsense from the National Party about this policy, we should just be saying, stop. That's actually not what's important here. What's important is the fact that there are 159,000 children living in material poverty in this country. And that number's going up. It's not going down. The fact that you don't know where people from emergency housing are going to. Why don't you know that? Right? Why is it that unemployment is rising and we're losing someone to Australia every 4 minutes? Right? Those are the things we should be saying.
Wow.
Your distractions are, it's just there just to distract from the fact that your policies are actually failing. And we need better policies. And that actually requires all three parties on the left to work together to make sure that in the 500 and odd days we have before the election, we can make sure the public knows there's a better alternative to what's on the table from National and ACT and NZ First.
I think what annoyed me about the weekend when Chippy said they were stupid comments, and then Carmel said something the next day. It wasn't quite as harsh as that, but it was something along those lines. Was it feels to me like, and this is just my opinion, you may disagree with it, that each of the parties that sit on the left, and I do put Labour in that, have a role to play in building a coalition. And it feels like Labour are the centre left party, so to speak. And then the left, the further left are the Greens, and Te Pāti Māori kind of floats around, and they all have their own jobs to do. And it feels like the Greens job, one of the jobs the Greens have got is to activate that further left base that is typically more apathetic than the centrist base, and the Labour's job is to pull some of those quote unquote swing voters back to them that went across to them to National last time, but are now freaking out with what National's putting through. And so they need to be a team to do it. And it felt a little bit like when Chippy said that was stupid, it was like, why are you shitting on a teammate? You know, this is you giving fodder to to Luxon to go, look, even Labour thinks they're stupid. You know, that was the thing that upset me. I was like, it's like you can disagree or be in a slightly different place or have a different role, but not shit on your teammate. That's how it felt.
Yeah, that's fair. And I don't know if we can add any more value to that. We need to treat each other. The reality is that if we are going to govern again, it will be with the Greens and perhaps Te Pāti Māori, and we need to be respectful of each other as we lead up to the election. There's a lot of national vote, a lot of ACT vote, a lot of New Zealand First vote that we can scrape together. And let's not forget, folks, 200,000 people, traditional Labour Party people, did not vote at the last election because they didn't think it was worth it enough. Because what was our great policy? No GST or fruit and vegetables, you know, and it just didn't motivate people enough.
That's good. And Shane, right now, the polls are telling us the government isn't popular.
No.
Right? Right now, the polls are telling us the public wants change. It wants positive change. It wants to change. The country has buyer's regret on the decisions that were made at the last election. Right? We've got to work together to make sure that we have that policy, that thing that's going to get those 200,000 voters out. In 2017, we had the families package. We had Best Start. Right? We had the winter energy payment. We did first year free for tertiary education. Right? Yet there are students who are saying their fees going up by 6% this year. They're going from first year to last year free just to save the government $900 million. Right? Where we've got rising youth unemployment, and there's nothing from this government at all to tackle any of these things.
Look, I think from a strategic perspective, if I was a Labour and the Greens, I would go after the elderly vote that seems to be traditionally support Winston, but they've been very let down by Winston. They got a slight rise, I think, to where inflation is at this year, but nothing the year before. And the tax cuts, I think the average Kaumata got $2.50, where I got $22. I think there's a lot of despondent, and you know, when they try to distract by you saying, "Oh, woke politics," and you know, having a crack at the guy from the Kiwi Bank, but when actually there's less kind in your cupboard, and you've got a winter power bill. Thank Christ for the winter energy bill, but power's going to go up by $10 a month. And it's going to compound. That's a huge issue for many people. And it's a type of issue that Labour and the Greens can get right and get some unity on, because really those are the issues that count the most.